Kamala. We're a long way from 2008. We're 16 years from 2008. Black. Okay, if you insist. I mean, as I tell my students at Brown when we talk about this kind of thing, she has chosen to be black. We should let her choose to be black. And then I asked them, should we have allowed Rachel Dolezal to choose to be black? Rachel Dolezal, if anyone needs to know, was the white woman who thought of herself as being black and who fancied and fashioned her biography and her, you know, resume and her hairstyle and I don't know, her skin tone or whatever to try to quote unquote pass for black. So, I mean, I don't want to be too partisan here.
You can be as partisan as you want.
You can be as partisan as you want. He's hoping for it, all right?
No, I'm okay. I'm just trying to, I don't argue too much on this show, okay?
Kamala Harris' father, Donald Harris, I know he's an economist. He's older than me, but not that much older than me. When I was on the job market in 1976, that's almost a half century ago, and I flew out to Palo Alto to be interviewed by people at Stanford, he was on the hiring committee. I remember sitting in his office and talking with him. He's a Marxist, a post-Keynesian. I mean, I could go into the details. I mean, you know, but basically, he's a radical, socialist-oriented, quantitative economist, quite skilled at what he did. He's Jamaican, a light-skinned brother. I'm sure he has a lot of European ancestry and maybe some Chinese, because it's Jamaica after all, and you know, whatever. And the mother is a Brahmin, Indian woman. I know a good friend of mine is an economist named Rajiv Sethi, and Rajiv's mother and Kamala's mother were classmates in college in India. So I you know, have some ideas. So she's black. She decides she's going to be black. Okay.
What does it mean for you when, I guess in terms of an identity of somebody, like when somebody is black or isn't black, I guess in this context?
Well, at a theoretical level, it shouldn't mean all that much because we're in the 21st century and race is a kind of a fiction. It's kind of an ephemera, you know, and
what do you mean when you say that?
What I mean is it's not essential. That is, her being black doesn't represent me because I'm black and she's black. I mean, if I think like that, I'm a child. I'm a dupe. I'm being led by the nose. I'm being driven by stuff that's not essential. And I get this in part from my wife, who is black, from a working class Houston neighborhood, and who is a socialist in her basic political instincts, and who thinks of whenever you say race, she says, oh, that's culture war stuff. Why don't we talk about the economy? Why don't we talk about the working class? Why don't we talk about the wealth distribution? Why don't we talk about taxes? Whatever. So that's what I mean by saying I shouldn't be much affected by whether or not she's black. I also don't trust the politicians when they wave the flag of race. I think they're trying to appeal to my baser instincts. They're trying to get me. I mean, it's like voting for somebody because they're a Catholic. Yeah, I mean, you know, or they're a Jew. You know, the first Jew to be this or that. I mean, people will do it, but it feels a little abdicating of my responsibility as a citizen to assess people on the basis of the deeper content of what it is that they represent as political leaders. So I think a lot of this counting of the number of black people who are elected to this or that, drawing of congressional districts to create black majorities so they can elect quote unquote representatives of their choice is anachronistic. It's so mid-20th century when all the ground underneath our feet is shifting constantly on the racial lane. All the action is at the margins, multiracial, interracial, transracial. So I think that. But I also have to say, as a product of the South Side of Chicago, you heard me invoke my Uncle Mooney. You heard me talk about the carpetbagger Barack Hussein Obama. that I'm black. I mean, I don't want to let go of the attachment that I feel to this fiction, which is my race. Is it really a fiction? Okay, we could try to parse it. Maybe it's a cultural thing that I'm referring to. It's not the complexion of the skin. It's not the breadth of the nose or the thickness of the lips. It's that I like a certain kind of barbecue, and that Muddy Waters really moves me, and so does John Coltrane, and Charles Mingus move me, and that I'm black because I have a certain narrative, because the story about the slaves that's told in Percival Everett's new book about Huckleberry Finn moves me, because when I read it and I think about the travail of slavery, it's like personal to me, and I identify with it because I see myself as a black intellectual, because I choose to apply my talents to an analysis and an exposition of the problems confronting black people, my people. I think of them as my people, and I don't want to let go of that, even though I know at the end of the day, that's so 20th century. And by the time I'm history, and unfortunately that might be sooner than we think, it'll be even less so.
What do you identify most as? Do you think of yourself as an American, as a person from Chicago, as an African American, as a black guy, as a conservative, as a, what is the, yeah?
Yeah. Well, I have an answer. I mean, I have a pat answer. I think of myself as an American. I've transcended, Tolstoy is mine. That's one of my signature lines. Einstein is mine. In other words, the inheritance of the Western tradition is mine. I am a man of the West. Maybe that's my answer. Maybe my answer is that I am a man of the West, that I am a modern man in the American context who has been developed and educated in the culture of the West. That's all I know. The only language I speak with fluency is English. The history that I've read is the history that we know of the West. I'm not a Muslim. I'm not an Easterner. I'm not an African. I'm an American. And I have a essay out there called The Case for Black Patriotism, in which I start off by saying, we're not Africans, we're Americans. Our inheritance is mainly birthright citizenship in this great republic. We need to be figuring out at the table with the rest of our compatriots about what it is that we, and then when I say the antecedent is not complicated. The antecedent is we Americans are going to do. On the other hand, nationalism is not the highest value. I am an American, but I'm also a human being. I look around the world, I see the stuff that's happening. I identify as I do as a human being with the sufferings and the travails and challenges that other human beings confront. So I don't think I answered you directly. I'm an American, I'm a modern American, I'm a Western person. I don't seek to be alienated from the civilization that has nurtured me. I want to embrace that civilization.
I notice when we're describing this, I'm noticing this interesting dissonance. And it seems like you're quite comfortable kind of existing within the dissonance, which is, on one hand, when I said, this is Glenn Loury, what do people best know you as? You said a black conservative, right? Which is a very racialized, in-your-face kind of thing. And you said that would be my epithet. But then on the other side, you're saying, but that's also so 20th century, which is like this very kind of dissonant experience with the racial identity. Do you find yourself comfortable just existing within that dissonance of it, recognizing that you both feel very tied to it and realize that it maybe shouldn't be? Or how do you reconcile this dissonance?
That is such a perceptive observation. Because it's true, and I live with this dissonance and dissidence every day. It depends on what side of the bed I got out of this morning. I mean, I take myself to reproach sometimes for being too focused on race when I know at the end of the day, and I'll give an example, when I know at the end of the day that that's not the answer. The example is Coleman Hughes, the young intellectual. He's a podcaster and a writer. He has a book out, The End of Race Politics. Coleman Hughes. He's not even out of his 20s yet. Columbia University graduate. I've known him for a long time, since his student days. And in his book, he full-throatedly denounces the anti-race Black Lives Matter types as being inconsistent with the true ideals of the civil rights movement, and he argues for a kind of racelessness. He says we ought not to take note of race, not only in law, but also in life. We ought to get over it. I hope not to do discredit to his argument, which is subtle and nuanced, but that's what I take from it. And when I read that, I hear myself to a certain degree talking to my students. I'm in the university. I've been doing it for a long time. The kids come and go. Every year is another cohort. And they come in there and they want to be black and they want to be gay and they want to be whatever they want to be. And they come with these blinkers on. And what I want to tell them is you now have the opportunity to acquaint yourself with the best that's been written and thought in human culture. Get out of the box. You came in as this or that. You shouldn't leave merely having heard about this or that. Don't hang out in the Afro Studies department with respect to my colleagues. I don't mean any disrespect. I mean, the students have an opportunity to grow, to broaden themselves, to read the literatures of other cultures, to think about the lives of other people, and they should seize that opportunity. So I tell them that. On the other hand, as I get older and I think back on my life and I think forward about my legacy, I do want to be seen as someone who contributed to African American life and culture and someone whose work advanced the agenda, et cetera, of quote unquote my people. And I ask myself this question, I say, what does it mean even when I say my people? What is a people? And are African Americans a people in the sense in which one thinks about a people? I mean, Jewish people, that's a people. Are African Americans a people? We have cultural touchstones. We have a set of shared historical narratives. Whatever. But how thick is that? And Irish Americans, Italian Americans. If I'd gone back 100 years and I found a typical Irish person walking around the streets of New York or Boston or Baltimore or whatever, and I'd ask them about it, I mean, they would have had a very elaborate account of their peoplehood, and it would have made a whole lot of sense in 1910, and it would make no sense whatsoever in 2010. Well, it might be that Glenn Loury's account of what his life is and what it meant makes a lot of sense in 2010, and no sense whatever in 2110. And even Coleman Hughes is not going to be alive in 2110, so I take some comfort in that. No, I don't. I'm just kidding, everybody. That's a joke, okay? Relax.